Have you ever noticed how sometimes a woman's curiosity turns into a quiet obsession, and even she can't explain why? It doesn't start with love. It doesn't even start with attraction. It begins with something far more subtle, far more dangerous: intrigue. That strange magnetic pull that makes her wonder, who is he? Not because of what you said, not because of what you did, but because of what she can't quite figure out. You see, in the world of dark psychology, attraction doesn't ignite from clarity. It's born in mystery. And the female mind is wired for one powerful instinct: to understand what she cannot fully grasp. When she meets a man who doesn't reveal everything, who speaks less and implies more, something in her subconscious begins to stir. It's not love. It's not even desire. It's curiosity. And curiosity is the first spark that lights the fire of obsession. The hidden power of mystery. Think about it. In a world where everyone is trying to be seen, the one who remains unreadable stands out. Most men reveal too much, too fast. They talk about their goals, their emotions, their stories, thinking it will make them more relatable. But in reality, they kill the mystery before it even begins. The Machiavellian man knows this. He understands that power lies not in speaking, but in implying. He doesn't chase attention. He attracts curiosity, because curiosity is the invisible leash of attraction. Once it wraps around her mind, she starts thinking about you when you're not around. She replays your words, your expressions, your tone, trying to decode who you really are. This is the first psychological trap, the curiosity loop. The curiosity loop, a mind game of the subconscious. Psychologists describe the curiosity loop as a mental itch that can't be ignored. It happens when the mind senses a gap between what it knows and what it doesn't. And here's the secret. Once that gap opens, the brain becomes obsessed with closing it. It's the same reason people binge-watch shows, check messages, or endlessly scroll. The human mind hates unfinished stories. Now imagine you becoming her unfinished story, when you give her just enough to stay interested, but not enough to feel certain. You awaken that same psychological mechanism. Her thoughts start circling around you, trying to close the loop. But every time she feels close to understanding you, you shift slightly. You become unpredictable, and that loop resets again. This is why women often say things like, "There's something about him I can't explain. He's different. I just can't put my finger on it." That's not poetry, that's psychology. You've become a mental puzzle. And the female mind loves puzzles. Emotional contrast. The silent magnetism, what really pulls her in, is emotional contrast. It's not just what you say. It's the way you make her feel. One moment you're warm, calm, and focused. The next you're distant and unreadable. You make her feel seen. Then you make her miss that feeling. It's the emotional version of hot and cold. And the more contrast you create, the stronger the emotional memory becomes. Women are not drawn to the obvious. They're drawn to what feels different, to the man who doesn't fit into the patterns she's used to. Because when a woman can't predict you, she starts to feel you. And when she feels you, you stop being just another man. You become an experience. The Machiavellian rule of mystery, Niccolò Machiavelli once wrote, "Men should be either treated kindly or crushed, for they can avenge slight injuries but not great ones." In the world of attraction, this translates differently. Reveal either everything or nothing. When you give a woman half-truths, half emotions, half attention, you create an emotional imbalance. She can't categorize you. She can't predict you. And that uncertainty fuels her interest. A Machiavellian thinker uses this awareness strategically. He doesn't manipulate, he manages perception. He knows when to speak, and when silence is louder than words. He understands that mystery isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about revealing yourself slowly, layer by layer. Because every time you reveal a new layer, you reignite the curiosity loop. Why curiosity always comes before desire. Every powerful emotion, love, desire, infatuation, begins with curiosity. Without curiosity, there's no reason for the mind to focus. Without focus, there's no attachment. Curiosity is the psychological hook. Once it's planted, the rest unfolds naturally. That's why the first phase of female desire isn't physical, it's mental. It begins the moment she wonders, what is it about him? And that single question becomes the seed that grows into fascination, attraction, and eventually obsession. Becoming the enigma, to awaken this first spark in a woman, you must become the enigma. Not cold, not arrogant, but centered. A man who is calm, controlled, and detached from the need for approval radiates something powerful, mystery. He doesn't overshare. He listens more than he speaks. He chooses his words carefully, like a sculptor carving meaning from silence. He lets her curiosity bloom naturally, because here's the truth. When you stop trying to impress her, you start to imprint on her. And the moment she starts thinking about you when you're not there, you've already won the first battle, the battle of attention. The beginning of the spiral, every obsession begins the same way, quietly. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It starts with a glance, a question, a feeling she can't name, and before she realizes it, her mind is orbiting around yours. That's the power of the first spark and the seed of curiosity. You don't need to force desire. You only need to ignite it once, because when curiosity is born in a woman's mind, it grows in silence, until the silence becomes too loud to ignore, and that's where the game truly begins. Curiosity has been sparked. The seed is planted, and now the second level begins. Attention. Once a woman's mind becomes curious about a man, her subconscious shifts its focus. She starts noticing you differently. The things that others overlook, she sees. The way you move, the way you pause before speaking, the calm in your voice, if they all start to matter. This is the birth of attraction, not as a feeling, but as a focus. Because before a woman feels desire for you, she must first notice you. The shift in her mind, something subtle happens here. She begins to seek patterns in your behavior. Her brain starts asking quiet questions. Why is he so calm? Why doesn't he try to impress anyone? What's his story? She observes you now, not with her eyes, but with her intuition. And every time you don't give her clear answers, you feed the mystery that her mind craves. At this point, you've become an emotional mirror. She begins to reflect her own imagination onto you. The more mysterious you remain, the more she fills in the blanks, with fantasies, with meaning, with emotion. This is the dangerous beauty of attention. Once you occupy space in her thoughts, your silence becomes louder than other men's words. Controlled imbalance, the art of being unpredictable. Machiavellian dark psychology calls this phase controlled imbalance. It's the psychological art of keeping her slightly off-center, emotionally uncertain but deeply intrigued. When she feels she understands you completely, interest fades. But when you stay slightly unpredictable, her mind keeps chasing understanding. Here's the paradox: predictability feels safe, but safety kills attraction. Mystery feels uncertain, but uncertainty fuels desire. That's why the man who never fully reveals his emotions, who seems to know something she doesn't, creates an emotional tension. She cannot resist. She feels drawn toward him, even when she doesn't want to be. Her logic may say he's not even my type, but her emotions whisper, then why can't I stop thinking about him? That is the magnet of attention, invisible yet undeniable. Energy over appearance. Here's what most men never understand. Attraction has less to do with what you look like, and more to do with the energy you project. When your energy is calm, grounded and detached from outcome, it signals control, and control to the female psyche equals power. A woman can sense when a man is emotionally centered. He's not desperate for validation. He's not competing for approval. He's simply present, watching, observing, moving at his own rhythm. That calm confidence creates polarity, the silent dance between masculine stillness and feminine curiosity. Women don't crave constant attention. They crave impact. They remember how you make them feel when your energy enters a room. So when your presence feels powerful, they can't help but pay attention. The attention web, think of this phase as weaving a web, not of manipulation but of perception. Each small moment, each look, each silence adds another strand. You're not trying to capture her. You're letting her walk in willingly. She starts initiating conversation. She asks subtle questions. She lingers a little longer when you speak. And here's the secret. You respond but never fully engage. You mirror her energy but you don't chase it. You let her lean in first. That's how you build psychological gravity. Gravity doesn't chase anything, as it simply pulls. That's what attention is. Invisible gravity created through emotional contrast and restraint. The danger of overexposure. Now, Here's the trap most men fall into. They mistake her attention for invitation. They start texting too much. They explain their feelings. They start performing, thinking it will strengthen attraction. But the moment you try to prove your value, the illusion collapses. The mystery evaporates, because attention thrives on one thing: scarcity. The less available your energy becomes, the more valuable it feels. So when you sense she's watching, stay unbothered. When she tries to pull your focus, remain composed. You must be there, but not hers. That's how you maintain psychological distance. The silent force that turns simple interest into fascination. The emotional echo. When a woman's attention lingers on a man, she starts forming emotional associations. She begins to feel things when she thinks about him. Admiration, curiosity, even nervousness. These emotions create an emotional echo, a residue that stays long after the moment ends. It's why she checks your profile late at night, why she replays your words in her mind, why she feels a rush when she sees your name appear on her screen. At this level, you've gone beyond curiosity. You've become emotionally relevant. And that is the foundation of true attraction. The Machiavellian strategy, in Machiavellian terms, this is where power is built silently. You don't demand attention, you command it. Not through ego, but through presence. Not through chasing, but through restraint. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." In attraction, this translates to emotional respect. She must sense your strength before she feels your softness, because only then does your affection carry weight. The man who earns attention easily loses it, but the man who commands it through mystery and self-control becomes unforgettable. The transition to desire. As her attention deepens, something begins to shift beneath the surface. She's no longer just curious, she's emotionally invested. Your absence now feels like something, and that's how you transition to the next level: emotional connection. It begins when her thoughts turn into feelings, and those feelings start to control her focus. That's the next chapter in this psychological dance, where attention transforms into attachment, and interest becomes craving. By now the web has been spun. Curiosity has turned into attention, and attention has begun to feel like something more. This is where logic begins to fade, and emotion takes control. You've moved from being a thought in her mind to being a feeling in her body, a presence she senses even when you're gone. This is the emotional hook, the invisible thread that ties her heart to the mystery of your existence. The moment feeling replaces thinking. It starts subtly. She begins to think about you without trying to. A song reminds her of you. A scent brings you back into her mind. She replays your words in her head, not because she wants to, but because she has to. You've entered her emotional world, and this is where true attraction becomes powerful, because emotions, once engaged, are irrational. When a woman feels something, her logic no longer matters. She may tell herself, "He's not my type," or "I shouldn't care this much." But her subconscious has already made the decision. She's invested, not in who you are, but in how you make her feel. The science of emotional addiction psychologists call this process emotional conditioning. It's the same principle that drives addiction, the cycle of pleasure and uncertainty. When you give her moments of connection, a deep look, a compliment, a calm silence, her brain releases dopamine. She feels pleasure, warmth, validation, but then when you withdraw, her dopamine drops. She feels emptiness. Her mind begins to crave the next high, the next interaction, the next text, the next moment where she feels seen by you. That push and pull creates a chemical dependency. She's not addicted to you. She's addicted to how you make her feel. And that's the essence of the emotional hook, pleasure mixed with unpredictability. How the Machiavellian mind uses emotion now. Here's where the Machiavellian strategist separates himself from ordinary men. He doesn't chase emotion. He creates it. He knows when to give warmth and when to withdraw it. He understands that emotional contrast, that dance between presence and absence, deepens the bond more than constant attention ever could. Because when something is always available, the mind stops valuing it. But when it comes and goes unpredictably, the value multiplies. It's the same reason people cherish what they almost lose. This isn't manipulation. It's understanding human psychology. the emotional rhythm that governs attraction. The Machiavellian man moves with intent. Every word, every silence, every glance serves a purpose, to make her feel something she can't explain. And the more she feels, the deeper she falls into the emotional maze. The mirror of emotion, one of the most powerful psychological techniques in this stage, is mirroring. Not mimicry, sir, but emotional reflection. When she's calm, you match her tone. When she opens up, you mirror vulnerability. When she's distant, you grow even quieter. You don't force emotion, you amplify it. By reflecting her inner state, you make her feel understood on a level most men never reach. And when a woman feels understood, she begins to associate that emotion with you. That's when the connection transforms into bonding. She starts to see you as her emotional home, the one place where her feelings feel safe, even if she can't define why. Emotional power. Through restraint, here's a paradox that few understand. The strongest emotional influence comes not from what you give, but from what you hold back. When she expects your approval and doesn't get it, she wonders why. When she shares something deep and you listen without reacting, she becomes even more curious. Your restraint becomes magnetic, because restraint signals power. And power to the female subconscious feels safe, even when it confuses her. Machiavellian dark psychology isn't about coldness, it's about control. It's knowing that emotions are the most dangerous currency in the world, and that whoever stays calm controls the exchange. So when she's emotional, you remain centered. When she's uncertain, you stay grounded. Your calm becomes her anchor, and the more she feels that emotional balance in your presence, the more addicted she becomes to your stability. Emotional imprint. When you become memory, there's a moment in every emotional connection when something irreversible happens. You become a memory that feels alive. Even when you're not around, she feels your absence, not as emptiness but as presence, a ghost she welcomes. This is called emotional imprinting, when your energy, your tone, your silence become part of her internal world. Now, she doesn't just remember you, she feels you. And that feeling lingers long after you leave. It's what makes her smile randomly at work. It's what makes her check her phone without reason. It's what makes her tell her friends, "I can't explain it, and there's something about him." That something is the emotional hook. It's invisible, but it shapes every thought she has about you. The transition to attachment, when emotion becomes memory, and memory becomes need. You've reached the edge of control. Now she's emotionally invested. Your validation feels essential. Your absence feels painful. You've gone beyond attraction. You've entered the realm of attachment. And this is where the next level of dark psychology begins, the art of distance. Because once her emotions are tied to your presence, the most powerful move you can make is to disappear, not forever, just long enough for her to feel the void. That's how the emotional hook tightens. That's how fascination turns into obsession. In the next stage, we'll explore the power of distance, the silent strategy that transforms emotional dependence into psychological pursuit, where absence becomes your loudest message and desire evolves into chase. She's hooked. Her emotions are now intertwined with your presence. You've become a rhythm in her mind, a pulse she feels even in silence. But this is the most dangerous moment, because if you stay too close, the mystery dies. And if you pull away too soon, the connection breaks. The art of power lies in timing. And the most Machiavellian move you can make is not what you say, but what you withhold. This is the stage of distance, the silent weapon that transforms emotional attachment into obsession. When presence loses its power, most men fail here. Once they feel a woman's affection, they panic. They over-communicate, over-explain, over-pursue, believing that proximity will strengthen her love. But love doesn't thrive in comfort. It grows in tension. Familiarity is emotional gravity's enemy, because the moment you become predictable, the mind stops chasing. A Machiavellian thinker understands that desire is not nurtured by constant presence, but by strategic absence. It's not about playing games. It's about giving space for longing to grow, because when you remove your presence, you allow her mind to start filling the silence with you. The void effect, psychologists call it the void effect, the emotional phenomenon that occurs when something meaningful suddenly disappears. Her brain goes into panic mode. She replays conversations, overanalyzes your tone, searches for hidden meanings. Her subconscious begins to ask, did I do something wrong? Has he lost interest? Why hasn't he texted? This uncertainty triggers emotional tension, a powerful cocktail of fear and longing, and that tension is exactly what deepens desire. Because in human psychology, what we cannot have feels infinitely more valuable than what's easily available. The void makes her crave closure, but you don't give it. You let her wonder. You let her miss you. You let her feel the distance, and slowly, that feeling turns into yearning. The paradox of withdrawal. Here's what most never understand. When you pull away emotionally, you don't push her out, you pull her in deeper. Every unanswered message, every moment of silence, every delay in your attention creates emotional scarcity, and scarcity amplifies value. That's why luxury brands never flood the market. They limit access, because rarity equals desire. The same law applies to attraction. When you become rare, when your attention is scarce, it becomes priceless. She begins to chase not because she wants to, but because her mind needs resolution. She tells herself she's just seeking clarity, but what she's truly chasing is the feeling of emotional security that your presence once gave. Her the Machiavellian balance distance, when used correctly, isn't coldness, it's control. The Machiavellian man doesn't ghost without purpose. He disappears to create emotional pressure. He knows that silence speaks louder than words, and that absence can ignite more passion than presence ever could. It's about balance. Withdraw too long and she detaches. Withdraw too little, and she never feels your loss. The art lies in the precise calibration of space and time. You let her feel the uncertainty, but you return before she loses hope. You give her a glimpse of warmth, then pull it away again, leaving her craving more. This is not cruelty, it's psychological gravity. You're training her emotions to orbit around your presence and absence alike. When the distance starts to speak, as the silence stretches, she begins to reinterpret everything. Your silence becomes a message. Your absence becomes a symbol. Your unpredictability becomes a mystery she needs to solve. This is when she starts investing emotionally without realizing it. She may tell herself, I don't care if he texts. But she checks her phone. She may tell her friends, I'm over him. But every night, her mind returns to you. Because distance doesn't erase emotions, it magnifies them. And what was once simple attraction now transforms into psychological pursuit. She wants to win you back, not because she's sure of you, but because she's unsure of herself. And that uncertainty fuels her obsession, the power of emotional absence. Here's the paradox that defines Machiavellian attraction. You create more emotional power by not being there than most men create by constantly showing up. Your absence becomes an event. Your silence becomes suspense. You turn emotional emptiness into a stage and let her imagination perform upon it. She fills that emptiness with her own thoughts, fears and hopes, until she no longer knows whether it's desire or madness. And that's the secret. You've made her emotional energy work against her. She's no longer chasing love. She's chasing closure. But closure never comes, because the Machiavellian mind never gives the full story, only chapters. And every pause between them becomes another page in her obsession, the return of presence then. When the silence is heavy enough to ache, you return. Not with desperation, not with apology, just calm, confident re-entry. Your presence, once familiar, now feels powerful again. She breathes differently when you're near. She realizes how much she missed your energy, and that realization deepens the bond even further, because absence renews appreciation. And longing, once rewarded, becomes devotion. Transition to obsession, you've now crossed the emotional threshold. She's no longer trying to understand you, she's trying to have you. Her curiosity became attention. Attention became emotion. Emotion met distance. And now the seed of obsession has begun to bloom. This is where the game of power becomes psychological art, because from here onward, you no longer chase, you no longer convince, you no longer pursue. She does, and that is the final level, the obsession zone. By now, the transformation is complete. What began as curiosity has evolved into fixation. What started as attention has become addiction. She no longer just thinks of you, she feels you constantly. You've become a ghost living inside her thoughts. A presence that refuses to fade. This is the final stage, the obsession zone, when desire becomes identity. It begins when she stops asking, "Who is he?" and starts whispering, "Who am I when he's not here?" You've transcended from being a man to being an experience. Every emotion she feels now passes through your memory. Every high, every silence, every dream carries a trace of your presence. This is the point where desire merges with identity, where she no longer knows if she wants you or if she needs you to feel complete. And that's the essence of obsession, when the mind confuses loss with love. The symbol, not the man at this level. You are no longer flesh and bone. You've become a symbol, a psychological archetype her mind created. Carl Jung once said, "People don't fall in love with you. They fall in love with the image they have of you inside their minds." That image, shaped by your silence, your restraint, your unpredictability, now controls her emotional world. She projects her desires, her fantasies, and her insecurities onto it. You've become a mirror reflecting her inner world, her longing for mystery, her hunger for intensity, her addiction to uncertainty. In dark psychology, this is known as projectional obsession, a stage where the emotional energy a person invests in another becomes self-sustaining. Even if you vanish, the projection remains. And she continues to chase what no longer exists, because what she's truly chasing isn't you. It's the version of you she created, the emotional feedback loop. Once obsession takes hold, a feedback loop forms in her psyche. She thinks of you, she feels emotion, that emotion reminds her of you, and the cycle repeats. Every thought triggers a feeling, and every feeling deepens the memory. The brain becomes addicted to this loop. Because the emotional highs and lows, it creates release dopamine, the same chemical responsible for cravings and compulsion. That's why she checks your profile, rereads old messages, or watches your stories in silence. Each small interaction reignites the chemical rush, and without realizing it, she becomes enslaved by her own emotions. She's not chasing pleasure anymore. She's chasing relief from the withdrawal of your absence. The Machiavellian perspective. The Machiavellian strategist never seeks to control through fear or force. He controls through emotionally triggered choice. She feels like she's choosing you, but in reality, her emotions have already made the choice for her. You've given her just enough light to crave warmth, and just enough darkness to fear losing it. You've become her psychological center of gravity. And once a woman's emotions orbit a man's energy, it's no longer about romance. It's about possession. But here's where the line between power and destruction blurs, because obsession, once awakened, is a fire that consumes everything, including the one who started it. The shadow side of obsession, Carl. Jung spoke often about the shadow, the hidden part of the psyche that contains our repressed desires and fears. When a woman becomes obsessed, what she's truly facing is not you, but her own shadow, the part of her that craves intensity, chaos, and surrender. You've simply awakened it, and that's why obsession can be both intoxicating and terrifying, because the same energy that makes her feel alive also makes her lose control. She begins to justify everything, your silence, your distance, even your absence. She interprets them as signs, as proof of something deeper. Her mind rewrites reality to protect the emotion. That's not love. That's psychological captivity. The Machiavellian lesson in dark psychology, there's an unspoken rule. Power is not in owning others, it's in mastering yourself. Because the same emotional energy you awaken in others can easily turn against you if you're not centered. If you let ego feed on admiration, you lose control. If you mistake obsession for loyalty, you invite chaos. The true Machiavellian understands the fine balance between influence and attachment. He doesn't abuse emotion, he studies it. He doesn't destroy hearts, he reads them. And above all, he never lets another person's obsession pull him out of his own composure. The goal isn't to enslave, it's to understand the power of emotional gravity and to remain unmoved within it. When you become the myth eventually, obsession matures into mythology. She no longer remembers you as you are, but as how you made her feel. You've become the story she tells herself at night, the what-if that lingers between her reality and her dreams. Even years later, She might still feel that spark when she hears your name, not because she misses you, but because the emotion never truly ended. That's the power of psychological imprinting, when you stop being a memory and become a myth. The final reflection. Every level of female desire, from curiosity to obsession, follows the same law. The mind craves what the heart cannot have, and the man who understands this law doesn't chase. He doesn't beg. He simply creates gravity, because true attraction isn't about being loved, it's about being remembered. And in the end, the Machiavellian truth remains timeless.